Okay, I think we're on. This seems kind of odd to me. Hold on a second here. What's going on? Are you guys there? Okay. SP Junkies, Sherilyn, Antonia, welcome, welcome. Agatha, Rock Angel says, hi, Dana. I love the hair color on you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I've been dark for so long, and then I decided to go lighter, but then it felt really just weird. So yeah, I think I like it dark better too. So welcome, you guys. Welcome to the live stream for what is today, January 10th, 2018. My name is Dana Morningstar, if you are new here, and this is something that we do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. And it runs for about 3 hours, depending on how good I am with time management. Sometimes it runs for 4. So we will trying to get better and get it to 3. So, oh my goodness, really? Third World Girl says, hi, ladies. I'm watching from Mombasa, Kenya. That is so cool. That is so cool. That I'm trying to think if that's about as far away of a person. Well, we've had people from Egypt, Ireland, kind of all over, but I don't know if we've ever had anybody from Kenya before. That's the internet is just so cool. Say, Lucy's here. So before I get going, I'm sorry, I forgot, I lost track of time, and I've got half my dinner. I have half a piece of red licorice here. I guess it's more of a snack, and my tea. I'm in the process of, if you got here right when the live stream started, you probably caught me munching away on my licorice. But let's see. I have some things to cover real quick before we get going, before I forget them. And yes, okay. The first one is, I wanted to let you guys know, hold on, I took a picture of it so I could find it easier. One of the gals who is an admin in my Facebook group is starting her own Facebook group, and it's called Parenting During/After Abuse, Neglect, and Trauma. And it has to do with kind of helping to support parents that are struggling with their children and trying to explain this and to their children and developing healthy children regardless of kind of the circumstances, and kind of helping them through this abuse. So that's a group that you guys might want to check out if you have a child with an abusive person. So what did I say that was again? That was called Parenting During/After Abuse, Neglect, and Trauma is the name of the group. So, and that's a Facebook group. So definitely check that out. And we are going to be starting a second Facebook group. Hold on, I gotta get my notes back up. Okay. So I started the group, but I haven't finalized everything for it. I was going to do that today, and I got like maybe 90% of the way through, but there's still some things I need to get done. So just kind of FYI, but that group is called 365 I Thrive. And that group is going to be, the focus is going to be 100% on us. So we're not going to be talking about narcissists and narcissism and abuse and all that in the context of trying to figure them out, trying to get them to change, trying to all of that. It's going to be, the focus is on us. So the plan is to have these two groups be, provide value to different people at different points in their understanding and healing. So the primary group, the Thrive After Abuse group, that group is for people that are still in abusive relationships, that are trying to figure this out, that are wanting to vent, that are just kind of struggling to put the pieces together. The 365 I Thrive group, it's on Facebook. That group is going to be all about us, boundaries, healing, understanding PTSD, kind of how we can navigate all of this. And it's just, I think it'll be fantastic. So I will be approving people in it tomorrow. I just kind of need to finalize a few details in there. But I'm excited about it. It'll be good. What else was I going to say? Oh, I wanted to talk about Oprah's talk the other night. Or speech, I should say. How fantastic was that? If you guys got a chance to see that, she's so strong, and I love that the spotlight is on abuse right now. And granted, the sexual abuse has the main focus of a lot of people, but it's all related, and it's a conversation that definitely needs to happen. So I'm thrilled that it is happening. And she just gave a really compelling speech having to do with that. If you guys haven't seen it, you might want to go on YouTube and take a listen. It was good. Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention was book club for this month. I don't know, Lucy, kind of who else normally reads the book club book is book club book for this month is Codependency for Dummies. It's one of the books in like the For Dummies series. So terrible title, but fantastic book. I'm only about 40 something % of the way through, and I have just a ton of notes. So I'm almost kind of thinking that we might want to do more than one book club live stream. I don't know if we would be able to get through everything in that book in one book club live stream. Even if we went for like 4 hours, I still think it would be really long. So I am open to kind of what you guys think. And I don't know. I don't know. Would you guys be open to doing 2 book club live streams? We could do Thursday and Friday for that. And it's the last Thursday of the month is when those book club live streams normally are. So that would be, what is that? The 25th of January. So that would be the 25th and the 26th. Yeah, Maria says the book is chock full of information. I agree. It would be great to split it up. There's so much in that book that I feel is so valuable to us. And regardless of whether or not you identify with being codependent or not, there's a ton of information in there about boundaries and, just setting boundaries and understanding boundaries, understanding relationships that we might have with other people, some kind of maybe skewed thinking that we sometimes tend to have as far as relationships with other people. That's a lot. Okay, Little Miss says, yes, as many days as we need. Okay, so let's plan on doing Thursday and Friday and then go from there. And if we have to do one more day with that, I'm totally okay with that. And I would be even okay with doing 2 book club live streams on it, and then maybe even having another day where we just kind of discuss all of that in more detail. So I will be posting. That book is really heavy reading. So it's been slow. It's not heavy reading. It's just chock full of information. It's been slow going for me. So my goal is to have my notes up on my website by the 15th. I don't know if that's going to happen. I'll see what I can do in the next few days, but I've got quite a bit to read still. But once I post them, I'll post a link on Facebook. I'll let you guys know so you can start at least reading them. Bear, hello, Bear. I was just thinking about you today. Bear says the new self-focused Facebook group sounds great. Good deal. Yeah, well, I hope to see you in there. I think it'll be a really good book or a really good group. And one of the things that one of the other admins in my group we were talking about today with as far as like kind of how to structure keeping the group about us. And so I'm excited. So I was working today. I had drafted up this whole, I did one example, like kind of spelled out this example. And then I did kind of a whole set of like kind of core values that I kind of my mission statement, I guess, for the group, like the direction that I would like the group to go in. And I'm excited. I'm going to be really working on just pumping a bunch of information about boundaries and healthy relationships into that group because, I think so many of us, and this is what this other gal, one of the admins and I were talking about today is, it's when you don't know what you don't know, it's really difficult, understandably so, to try to navigate all of this. And so we're trying to set people up to win as much as possible with how to actually focus on themselves, because that is something that I think the vast majority of us here struggle with. We've been so kind of consumed with trying to understand and do damage control with this abusive person in our life that we don't know. We don't know what we want, what we think, what we feel, what any of that. We're very out of tune with ourselves because our whole life has been, or the whole time we've been with them has been trying to understand them, trying to earn their love, trying to, earn being treated with dignity and respect, all of those things. So it's going to be good. Harriet says, what is the name of the self-focus group? It is called 365. So 365, I Thrive. And you can find it on Facebook. It's a closed group. And we're going to, like I was saying earlier, we're going to start approving. That sounds so like formal. We're actually going to open that group up probably. Well, yeah, it'll be tomorrow because I'll probably get done here around midnight. So we're going to open it up tomorrow once I make sure that there's enough kind of infrastructure in place and that I can get the admins in there caught up to speed and all of that. And then just as a reminder for those that are hopping on, Linda, one of the gals that's an admin in the other Facebook group. Oh my gosh, what is going on? What did I just hit on my phone? Okay, jeez, hold on a second. Here we go. She has a Facebook group where, oh, there it is. She has a Facebook group called Parenting During/After Abuse, Neglect, and Trauma. And that's a group specifically designed to help parents, and to help children. So she's really the right person to be leading that group. She has gone through so much and she is such an amazing woman. She's so strong and I don't know how she's managed to stay sane, for one, but so calm and just good people. She's just good people. So I can't say enough good things about Linda. And I think if you're a parent and you're looking for a place to go to discuss this, I would just highly recommend that group. Suzanne mentions Pia Melody, who I love her as well. Yes. Says her YouTube videos, Codependent No More is Melody Beatty. Pia Melody is a different gal, and I forget which book she wrote, but I really like Pia Melody. I really like her videos. I think she spells things out in a very direct way, and I don't know. Like I said, I really like her work. Another person that comes to mind who I think is fantastic at this is Lisa Romano. So, and I'm sure there's probably other YouTubers out there that speak on this topic that I'm just not that familiar with their work. But again, Lisa Romano, I think is fantastic. She's again, lived this. She understands this stuff, and she's just a wealth of information. One of the things that she says that I absolutely love is and she just nails it. She says, it's not you, it's your programming. Everybody comes into this world kind of this almost like this blank slate, right? And we get all these messages from our parents, from siblings, from culture, from religion, from peers, from all kinds of different media, TV, music, these kinds of things. And so we're all kind of quote unquote programmed. And if we really want to change our lives, we need to start by examining the programming. So I would check some of her videos out too, if you're on the hunt for all this kind of stuff. Let's see. Anti JPug says Facebook, isn't that where the narcissists hide out? There's problematic people everywhere. So you bring up a good point. So let's address this really quick. It's very important to have healthy boundaries everywhere. There is no such thing as a safe place. And frankly, places that do claim to be safe probably have the most amount of predators because nobody's expecting them, because they have their guard down because they think that place is safe. So it's just really important at any given time. Another thing too, with joining any of these types of groups on Facebook, I highly recommend, if privacy is even remotely a concern, if you're having issues with attorneys or your ex stalking or being dangerous or any of this stuff, you'd be best off to create a fake Facebook account and join groups under a fake name, because it just doesn't take a lot for them to kind of follow you into one of these groups or have one of their friends follow you in, or they could create their own fake account and follow you in. So this is why, and I know, people tend to get upset with us in the group because we are very adamant about, please don't post anybody's name, identifying information, phone number. Make sure you've got all that stuff scratched out of your screenshots, because the stuff can get, not that I give two hoots about their privacy or their rights. I don't at all. I really don't. As far as I'm concerned, like, if a person doesn't want their behavior known, then they shouldn't do bad things. But this is about you, and this is about keeping you safe. Because if it gets back to them, if they hire an attorney, if they, their friends and family find out, I just don't want anybody's situation to get worse. So. Lily says, I tried using a fake name on Facebook and I couldn't do it. Kevin, great point, says, can you make it so no one can see which groups you're in? Yes. So you can go into the settings section and you can hide your groups. That is one thing that you can do. You can also put your whole profile on lock. Although here's the thing though, because Facebook keeps doing updates. And so what might have worked, 3 months ago might be totally different today. I am not 100% sure, even if you lock down those groups, it still might show that, you are one of those people that are in the groups. Like when people start joining, have you ever done that? Like, you join a group on, I don't know, corgis, right? Or something like that. And it'll show you who else is in that group. And it might also show you like recommended groups with those similar people that are in them. So I just wouldn't risk it. And if you do create a fake profile, Facebook normally will require, people are saying here they want a picture with the face on it, which makes sense. And to create a name that is somewhat believable. That sounds like a person's name, I guess, is what I'm saying. Really, Postmodern says, does anyone have links for for the Facebook groups I was talking about? I can definitely post them in the description area of the video when we're done here. But my group is called 365 I Thrive. 365 I Thrive on Facebook. And I don't know. But the other one is called Parenting During/After Abuse, Neglect and Trauma. Parenting During and After Abuse, Neglect and Trauma. Welcome. Future Narcbuster says, "Hi, Dana. This is the first time joining your live stream. I've been watching your past videos for weeks now. Awesome and life-saving." Welcome. Well, we're glad to have you here, and I'm really glad that those videos were able to help. James. What? James, how did you not know that I had a group? Oh my goodness, dude. Yes, we got to get you in. He says, I'm in. Yeah, very cool. I think you guys are going to enjoy it, especially this new group. Love says, yes, that's why those of us who are seriously being threatened to be killed when escaping a sick psycho can't join Facebook. Yes. Yeah, creating that fake account is huge. James says it's a closed group, right? Yes, it is. Just make sure that you hide your groups on your profile. So go to your settings and make sure that groups, I think it's like, can only be seen by you or something like that. And that might be a feature that we test, because Facebook just did a whole bunch of updates pertaining to groups, like, I don't even know, maybe like last week. So we'll have to kind of go back through and retest all that and see what people can see. Cynthia is talking to Maria and says, my breakup is still pretty fresh, but I hope that my obsession with understanding this narcissist fades. I don't want to focus on this negative my whole life. Yes. Yeah. Time does help with a lot of it, but I think also realizing that there is life after that. And, for me, and I've talked about this before, I felt like a bomb went off in my life, and then that was it. I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't think that there was really a forward to move into. I just kind of thought, okay, I just need to kind of heal as best as I can. And that's that. And it wasn't until I came across a website called Love Fraud. And Donna Anderson is her name. And she speaks about her experiences with being married to a sociopath. And this guy, I mean, like a lot of the people that we've experienced, just really outrageous behavior. Everything was a lie about him. And she had made a comment on our website that she felt that much of what had happened was really necessary for her spiritual growth. And that was the first time I had ever heard even the idea that something positive could come out of something like this. And that was a real game changer for me. And that's when I really got busy in trying to figure out, okay, well, like, what else could I do with this? And I began reading books on positive psychology and kind of healing post-traumatic stress disorder, and just really diving into trying to make this work for me as much as I humanly could. And I'm about 6 years out, and I can say I feel like I've squeezed so much out of this that, and us, it's going to sound maybe terrible, but it was a really awful wake up calls, because this happened a few times, that I needed to have happen in order to get me in alignment with myself. So that's kind of the goal, really, with everything that I do, is to try to share my experiences with you guys with all of this, and then for others to share their experience as well in the groups and in the chat. And then hopefully with with each person, it'll help kind of shave years off of that learning curve. Because when a person's fumbling around in the dark trying to find the pieces and then trying to find the order to put the pieces together, it can take decades, but when you work together as a group, it's so much easier to understand our situation when we can see people going through something similar. Like that just alone provides a ton of aha moments. Valenta says, do they treat their children the way that they treated you? He just ignored me and withholds all affection and attention. Will he do the same to the newborn? It's hard to say what he will do with the newborn, but, with abusive people, I think one of the mistakes that so many of us commonly make is, in a normal, decent people make this mistake because we have a hard time understanding, like, how could somebody be so different than anybody we've ever maybe met before, especially when children are involved. Like, how could a person just not care? How could a person, deny that they're the parent, or have no contact with their child, or give their child silent treatment, or disown their child, or do any of these terrible things? Their behavior is consistently erratic, and it has a blinding degree of selfishness. It's all about them. They don't bond to other people, and they don't bond deeply. And they might have a fantastic relationship with that child up until a certain age, or they might not ever have a good relationship with their child. They might use the child as a pawn the whole time. I think instead of trying to kind of figure out what he's going to do, I would kind of shift that and focus on, okay, well, what do you have control over? And how can you anticipate some of the things that he might potentially do? There's a fantastic book that I highly recommend you read called Divorce Poison, even if you're still married. But it's really about trying to kind of co-parent with a highly manipulative person and how to do damage control sooner than later. So this way you're prepared for any lies he might say, any kind of, and how to kind of talk to your child as they get older. If he does end up kind of, falling off the map, or not being very involved in their life, or being abusive to them or neglectful to them, how to talk to your child about that, and how to, kind of quote unquote co-parent as best as you possibly can. Which, with a narcissist or an abusive person in general, it's really not co-parenting. It's kind of counter-parenting, because they tend to always be, because they're always seeking to win, even when, like, there's no game, right? Like, there's no point in winning. It's like, you're like, this is our child. Like, why can't you just be a normal human being and just not be a jerk? Like, what is so freaking wrong with you? And they're lost in the paper bag of themselves, like I said, I would read up about kind of co-parenting with a manipulative person as much as you can. And Maria says, I suffered the most living a life with no boundaries. I always thought it was the problem people, but it was me living without these tools that was the biggest problem. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's these people, kind of narcissists and sociopaths and other types of abusive people, they tend to be the ones that cause us so much pain in our life that it's this wake-up call of, oh my God, what just happened? Because it's so outrageous and it's so over the top. It's unlike anything we've ever experienced before. And those relationships tend to kind of be this opening point where we do start searching for, like, what's going on. And this behavior is it's like a Lifetime TV movie. I mean, it's just so over the top, like a soap opera, and once we start connecting the dots and we realize, oh, okay, I was going through life thinking that kind of everybody was like me. If I was nice to other people, they would be nice to me. Kind of like you get what you give is, I think, a very kind of common credo that a lot of people live by, and that is not the case. And so I think the big point is realizing that there's all different types of people out there, and there's quite a few that are just unlike anything you've ever even encountered, that our love can't change them, our love can't save them, that the communication is not the issue, that their issue, it's not a relationship issue. It's not that if we somehow changed who we were, that they would somehow change who they were. Like, that's not the case. Like, sometimes it's an individual issue, it's a personality thing with them, and that's how they're going to go through life: using, abusing, neglecting, exploiting other people. That's them. It's not you. And there's nothing that we can do to change that. And so kind of realizing, that's a big aha moment, is realizing like what we have control over and what we don't have control over. And the only thing that we have control over is ourselves. And a big part of that is boundaries. And I think too, one of the things with boundaries, I know I felt this way, but I think a lot of people do, they get angry. They're like, you know what? I shouldn't have to change anything about myself. I didn't do anything wrong. It's very, very common. It's very common for people that are in abusive relationships. It's very common for people whose spouses, who they're married, or, have a person in their family who's an alcoholic or an addict. Like, no, I shouldn't have to go to therapy. Like, I don't, nothing wrong with me. Like, they're the one that's the addict. There's nothing wrong with me. Like, I just, because we oftentimes will think like, no, I'm a really good person. I call in sick for them. I take care of them when they're hungover. I've put up with so much. I've given this person second and 22nd chances. And, it's this idea of, if we're good enough, that somehow we should earn their sobriety or earn them treating us with dignity and respect or even kindness. And the reality is it doesn't work that way, So boundaries is a big piece to that. And not to say that boundaries is, always necessarily the issue. I think intuition is a big part of it. In my circumstances, the two main relationships that kind of drove me to start understanding all of this, they were Prince Charming for pretty much the whole time. And then I kind of found out, oh my God, this person's like living a double life. And then things just got crazy. So, there's a lot to be said for just kind of tuning into your intuition. And then also, I think too, just realizing we can only do the best we can do, and to be compassionate towards ourselves, But speaking of boundaries, I had a situation this weekend that I thought was very interesting, kind of worth sharing. So I went with a friend. We had planned to go, we were bored. We were going to go just around looking at open houses. And so I get over to her house and she's like, hey, you know what? Let's make up this story where your brother lives in California and he's here. He needs us to go house hunting. She had this like whole elaborate story planned. And I was like, what? I go, why? And she's like, well, then that way the realtors will just leave us alone. And I was like, well, we could just tell, like, why can't we just tell him, hey, we're just going around looking at open houses today. Like, we're not in the market to buy a house. And she just looked at me like I was from Mars. And it's interesting because she's not the only person that I've come across where this situation has happened. Where I'm like, you guys, like, we don't need to lie about this. Like, we can just say, hey, we're not in the market. We just saw you at an open house sign up. If we can think of anybody that's interested, like, we'll let them know. But, we're just going through. So I don't know. It was very interesting how uncomfortable a lot of people can be with telling the truth, even when the truth or the lie or any of it like does not even matter. And I'm not saying that my friend is a bad person. I think these are like little instances where a lot of people we're so used to not being okay with the truth that a lot of people don't even think twice about lying about little things like that. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. But then there was this other interesting thing that happened between us later on that day is we went out for lunch and we began having this conversation, and it turned towards discussing my relationship with Jack. And she's never been through anything even remotely like this. And anyways, it was a conversation I didn't want to have. And I was getting really upset. And I found myself justifying and arguing and defending and explaining and getting I was probably actually very intimidating. I was getting very upset. And at one point I feel like I really embarrassed myself in this restaurant because I got so upset. I like clapped my hands together and like slammed them down on the table trying to make a point, and was getting loud and kind of like leaned forward, like trying to get her to understand, you know, like, no, you think that you can see these people coming. You can't. Like a lot of them are really, really good. They're master manipulators, and a normal person that hasn't been through something like this doesn't stand a chance. I was getting so upset. And then later on, I apologized. I'm like, you know what? I like that really touched a nerve with me. And, I'm sorry. But one of the real, and this is going to be a weird realization to have, like, I didn't need to have that conversation, and it was weird because I'm not sure if there's been a whole lot of times in my life where a conversation has been so off the rails like that. I think before I just felt the need to stay in that conversation. So I don't know. It was very interesting. So this next time around, if I had to do it over again, what I would have done was just said, hey, you know what? Like, I think we need to change the subject because this is a real sensitive topic for me. And this just isn't gonna, it's just not gonna go anywhere, So boundaries are an interesting thing, and all of the different ways that they can surface in our lives that we're not even aware of, I guess, is the point that I'm making. So just something to think about. Thank you, Tracy, for the live stream donation. I appreciate that. Jamie says, I just don't understand why I feel like I need validation from him. Oh, my dear, we are going to talk all about that on this book club live stream at the end of this month. So what did we figure? The 25th and the 26th? Is that what's going on? Let me look at my phone again. 25th. Yes. 25th and 26th, the book Codependency for Dummies. We're going to talk a lot about that. Kind of in a nutshell, I think it is, if a person has been caught up in that dance where kind of through that intermittent reinforcement where all of us, we're good enough and then we're not good enough. We're good enough and then we're not good enough. And then especially if they move on at light speed, they find somebody else, they seem like they found this happily ever after, it can leave a person, it can take a person's self-worth and self-esteem and all of that away from them. So if you're not aware of what's going on. So if we've been looking out, if in general, if we're looking towards other people to validate us, if we're operating from that mindset of like, you complete me, then that's a problem. But again, this kind of goes back to that whole programming thing where so many of us were like, wait, what do you mean that's a problem? Like, that's love, right? Like, isn't that like what we're all doing here is like, we got to forgive and forget, and true love is forever, and love hurts, and the more you suffer, the more you care, kind of a thing, right? And then learning about healthy boundaries and getting more in tune with ourselves and realizing actually everything we've really been taught about love, or romantic love especially, is garbage, absolute garbage. And looking for another person to complete us, garbage. So it's very much about tuning into yourself and kind of figuring out, being able to validate yourself, being able to complete yourself. So we are each a whole person. And then when we're a whole person, at that point, then we can move forward and move into a healthy relationship, because we're not looking towards another person to, uh, somehow fill our voids and to complete us. But it's an exercise in crazy making when we're looking towards, and it sounds like you understand this, right? Like, if we're looking towards an abusive person to give us validation, we're never going to get what we're seeking. Okay. Right? Maria says, yes. What's that line from the movie Jerry Maguire? That you complete me. You go complete yourself. Yes, absolutely. I agree completely. And I think too, that's another one of those things with kind of these blurred boundaries is really that mindset of feeling like, okay, that if we're finding ourselves in this unequal dynamic where we're having to sink ourselves to save somebody else, or that we have this person in our life is more of a project than a partner. So if they've got some major stuff wrong with them, right? Like they're struggling with addiction of any kind, struggling with alcoholism, if they're struggling, if they are abusive, us thinking that they'll change, or holding on to hope that they'll change, or hanging on until we can't hang on anymore. All of those are signs of blurred or weak boundaries. The book that we read, what was the last book club on boundaries after a pathological relationship by Adeline Birch, was fantastic. I can't recommend that book highly enough. It's a easy read. It takes you a few hours to go through it. And she really spells stuff out. I highly recommend it. I think it's on Amazon for like $3 for maybe, at least for the ebook version of it, but it's a good book. And the whole thing too with validation and approval is the reality is that 10% of the people out in this world are going to hate you. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, they are not your people. They are never going to like you. They are not on team you. Then there's the other side of that. There's 10% of the people out there that are going to love you, and no matter what you do, and they're just going to be a super fan. They're your people. Like you're just on the same team. You guys just click. Like things are just really great. And then there's about 80% of the people that fall somewhere in between. And I see so many people and I fall into it too, where they're so afraid of putting themselves out there in some way, shape, or form, because they're afraid of criticism. They're afraid of people not liking them, of people being rude. And, and I think a big part of life is realizing that we've got to carve our own path. And while it's nice to have validation from other people, it can't be what is fueling us. It can't be what's fueling our self-esteem or our self-worth or our path in life. And that's really kind of boils down to, that's my goal for everybody, but everybody here for sure, is that you get to the place where you are so rock solid in who you are and your wants and your needs and your thoughts and your feelings and who you are, that you're not going to get knocked off balance by other people. So, and that can happen. It can happen. It's easy to get knocked off balance with other people, especially if we don't have a solid footing in who we are. But you can rebuild your life and get to the place where you do examine these things. Who am I and what am I about, and kind of what do I believe, and and learning to love yourself and validate yourself and build up your self-esteem. And once you're a whole person, then nobody can take that away from you. You know, we might have, if relationships or friendships or whatnot end, we might have hurt feelings. We might have damaged self-esteem, you know, but we're making the shift to realizing, okay, you know what? I've got some hurt feelings and I'm going to take some time to nurse those, but I'm not going to let it go deep down and impacting who I am as a person. And sometimes it can help to just visualize there's keeping those things in two very different buckets. A bucket, keep your hurt feelings and your self-worth in two different buckets. And you can do that starting right now. So if you're feeling really blown apart and you're like, oh my goodness, my self-worth, you know, I have none. I gave it all away to this person. Realize like you can reclaim it like that. You know, just fill that bucket back. Just visualize it. Like I'm filling up that self-worth bucket. You have worth, you have value because you're here on this planet. You exist. You have value because you're a living creature. So don't let anybody ever take that away from you. It's okay and normal to have hurt feelings. If your hurt feelings bucket is, you know, full to the brim, totally understandable. Like let's address that, but don't really visualize, get that clear in your head. You know, don't let anybody mess with your self-worth bucket. Jamie asks, is being an empath part of being super sensitive and taking criticisms hard? Yeah, you know, I think most people, this chair, you guys, hold on a second. I got to get more comfortable. This chair is, I need to tighten it up. One of these days, it's just going to fall apart on the live streams. Oh, gosh. Empaths. Empaths tend to be people that are very in tune, like emotionally in tune with other people. My guess would be that the reason most of us are like that is because we grew up in a family with an alcoholic, an addict, or an abusive or controlling person. And so we had to really learn how to read a room, how to read other people's emotions, because that was the way that we navigated that environment. You know, is dad in a bad mood? Like you just pick up on like these subtle emotional cues, you know, like he closed the door a little bit harder tonight than he did last night. Or, you know, is mom, what kind of mood is mom in? Or, you know, what have you. And so we just begin anticipating these things. And so it really, we tend to get really good at it. And there's a lot of us, myself included, that then we start actually thinking, we start building a career around it. We become like professional caregivers. It's very common, you know, teachers, I would say nurses, social workers, anybody in like a caregiving field tends to be really in tune with other people and other people's emotions. But oftentimes they're not in tune with their own. You know, they're the person that everybody goes to for advice. They're the person that people call when they're having a hard time. They're the empaths are the people that just are so like your pain is my pain, right? And when we start getting, I should have taken a picture of it. Somebody posted a meme in the group today about empaths. You know, they're difficult to manipulate. They can tell when people are lying. They're really in tune with other people's feelings, kind of all these different things. But and I had said, I really feel like it's important here to realize that it's only empowered empaths that are like that. Empaths who don't understand that they tend to overly absorb other people's emotions, that they get hurt easily, that they do a good job of kind of reading a room. If they don't have those boundaries, they are very gullible, and you know they're easy to manipulate. They're because they're so out of tune with themselves, because they're so in tune with somebody else. And that's the beauty of tuning into like your emotions and your intuition. Once you get those pieces of the puzzle in place, then you become incredibly intuitive and incredibly kind of this empath on fire, because you really can read a room and you become very difficult to manipulate because you're so you're just so in alignment with yourself, whereas other people are not, especially other people that never had to kind of learn how to navigate an environment. I mean, this is a skill that many of us have been fine tuning for decades. So normal people don't have that. But there is no value in being super in tune with other people at the expense of ourselves. You know, like there's no value in being a martyr. There's no value in sacrificing ourselves to save other people like that, even though we might think that that's, again, like this, everybody's kind of sold that that's somehow what love is, or that's what a caring person does, and it's not. You know, if a person truly cares about themselves, they value themselves, and if they truly value themselves, they make themselves a priority. They make their wants and needs and feelings a priority. They, you know, like they don't stick around in toxic situations. So there's like a lot of, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot to all this. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, Elizabeth says, society certainly doesn't teach anyone to be in self-alignment. Oh, that is for sure. That is for sure. I mean, there's so many awful, confusing messages that we get, right? Like it's this idea of if you love yourself, that you're a narcissist, right? That if you care about yourself, that you're selfish. Uh, self-care is not only not promoted, it's really frowned upon. Like, oh, that's disgusting. Like you should put everybody else first. And we're taught the exact opposite messages. Postmodern says, I think if your parents don't love you, you don't learn how to love yourself. I would agree. I think that's a big part of it. But I also think that anybody can kind of get knocked off course at any point in their life with that. Like I don't think a person has to be raised in a truly dysfunctional home in order to get tangled up with a narcissist or a sociopath. I think just having a few unexamined vulnerabilities and boundaries, it just not even having the stuff on their radar. I mean, my goodness, no, because that's the thing. Like the conversation I was having with my friend the other day. Like nobody thinks that they're going to get caught up in this. And so many other people can talk about boundaries and standards and this, that, and the other, but it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to actually live it. So. Yeah, absolutely. Postmodern is saying, I'm saying that as a parent, you do the best you can, but if your child is on the wrong path, there is nothing you can do. Meaning to say, parents are not always at fault. I agree completely with that. Completely. And frankly, the emotional manipulators that I have known in my life, as far as like all of their homes that they grew up in, I wouldn't say were like outrageously dysfunctional. I would say that they are kind of within that range of like normal dysfunction. And, you know, so there's kind of that whole nature versus nurture, like what kind of forms and shapes our personality. And of course, everybody responds to different events differently. And it might not have anything to do with their parenting, but it might have a lot to do with them getting bullied in school, or with them not getting enough attention at some point in their life. And then, kind of creating this whole grandiose delusion about things. I mean, there's so many different factors that we don't know. And yes, and postmodern says, yeah, once you raise a child, you learn to give it the best you can, but ultimately your child has to pick their own path. Yes. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot, is I really feel like if we had more open and honest conversations with children about life and about difficult times in life, dating, heartbreak, getting fired from a job, like things that tend to happen, loss of any kind, and explaining, here's the deal. Like, I love you. I'm going to do the best job I possibly can. There's probably, I'm not going to parent you perfectly. I'm going to do my best, but like, I, you know, my actions and maybe how you perceive my actions can be two very different things. And so I just want you to know that at the end of the day, like, you have to make the decision as far as like what kind of person that you want to be. Because here's the thing, like, you could have two children grow up in a home. They both grow up in an abusive home, right? One child goes on to become an abusive person themselves, the other person doesn't. And their reasoning is the same. You ask them, why did you become abusive? And they'll say, well, you know what? My mother was abusive. And so that's where I learned it from. Or my parents were abusive and that's where I learned it from. And then you ask the other person, well, why didn't you become abusive? Why are you so loving and good to your spouse? And they might say, you know what? I grew up watching my dad beat my mom. And I realized at a young age that that was never going to be me. And they go the exact opposite way. So it's like we all kind of have this internal compass, but I think it can really help to point these things out to children and to frame examples like that of, there's gonna be times in your life where you're at this fork in the road, and which road are you gonna take? Don't let the events of your life shape you, because they easily can. We've all been there, right? It's more about how we perceive the events in our life and how we allow them to shape us. So, yeah, powerful stuff. Yep, postmodern says genetics, DNA, temperament, personality. Yeah. One of the things, I was at the gym today and I just think about this stuff all the time. And I was thinking, and maybe they do this and I'm not aware of it, but I think a lot about how to help people become more resilient, because really that's the other side of trauma, is really helping people to develop that resiliency and be able to bounce back from what happened to them instead of just let that flatten them. And I was thinking about war veterans. And as far as I know, the current way of doing things is war veterans, they go to war, and then, I forget the percentage, but let's just, I don't know, a certain percentage of them develop PTSD, and then they come back, and then that goes probably undiagnosed for a while, years probably. And then they finally get diagnosed with PTSD, and then they work towards treating that. But to me, it just seems like, I think it would be better off if we would just assume that everybody that's going to war is going to need help processing that trauma. So, like, let's have that conversation up front about coping skills and what you're going to, frankly, not even like putting war aside, just going to a different country can be very traumatic. It's a culture shock. And even when a person goes to another country for any length of time, but especially for a few months, and then they go back, they feel very different from everybody in their peer group. Because they're like, wow, I have seen things that you haven't seen. I have eaten foods you haven't eaten. I've met people and been exposed to religion and culture and this whole other part of life that I never even knew existed. And then people back home are still the exact same. So just that experience of prolonged travel can be its own degree of like traumatic. And so then add in war and all of, the trauma that goes along with that. To me, it just seems like it would be better to have these conversations, to anticipate that and have these conversations up front. And that's a very valid point, Maria. She says, even in homes with sexual abuse, The predator doesn't always abuse every child, so their experiences are so very different for every child. That is a really great point. Yes. And so you have, oftentimes you have, um, the child that's the scapegoat. You have the child that's the golden child. And, the one that's abused. And it's interesting how children can all grow up in the same home and have not only very different experiences within that home, but have very different recollections of events. And so if they weren't the target of abuse, they might not realize that that abuse was even going on, or they might have really minimized it because it wasn't happening to them. So to them, it's sort of like, it's one thing if you're a kid that gets bullied in, I don't know, junior high or something, it's incredibly traumatic. It can drive, and it can and does drive kids to suicide. But for those kids that are watching the bullying going on, they might just acknowledge it like, oh yeah, so-and-so got bullied, but they're not emotionally invested in it. So it's not as traumatic to them. So they just don't get it. And I think that's oftentimes what happens in abusive families. Let's see. Adriana says, I know everything will work out the way it should, but a child who has a parent in jail is affected even when they don't have a relationship with them. Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you have one parent that is absent out of that child's life, odds are they're going to have some struggles with abandonment issues. Whether that's that parent is in jail, whether that parent was never in the picture to begin with, and frankly, whether or not that parent maybe got remarried and started their own family. I think that's incredibly traumatic for children. Whether that other parent, just ignored them, or all kinds of things. It's very, very common. I think it's so easy for human beings to be negatively impacted by the events in our life. And we're just now starting to understand. I think so much of this stuff has been understood in very like overt kind of extreme ways. Like the concept of codependency, for example, at first it was really understood through the lens of understanding alcoholism. And then they began realizing, oh, there's this pattern of behavior with their spouses and what's going on. And then at first they were called co-alcoholics. And then they realized, oh my goodness, like this whole family dynamic here, like there's a lot of patterns of behavior with the spouses, and there's a lot of patterns of behavior with the children in the way that everybody relates to one another. And so then that kind of codependency was really kind of reserved for understanding alcoholics for, I don't know, 10, 20 years. And then it expanded to drug addicts, and then kind of addicts in general. And now it's kind of moved on to understanding like, okay, no, anytime you've got this like one person with like, extreme behavior, that the whole family, generally, a narcissist or an addict or an alcoholic, which you could make the argument that anybody that's an addict or an alcoholic is acting from a place of narcissism, because they're driven by their addiction, which is making them incredibly selfish. But whenever that happens, where this one person's the primary focal point in that family, then the whole family has to reorganize around this person. And then things become incredibly just dysfunctional, and people are walking on eggshells and people pleasing and covering for them and lying. And, it's and a lot. Oh, good job. Deborah says, I wrote the "For When You Miss Him" letter to myself, and it works. Awesome. Yeah, it'll really help to snap a person out of that denial. It's easy to minimize. It's easy to minimize things. It's easy to forgetting is really kind of more denial, right? But like, it's amazing the stuff that we can quote unquote forget. So good. I'm glad. I'm glad that you wrote that, and I'm glad that it's helping. Postmodern says, yes, empaths are not saviors. Yes. I think the idea of anybody being a savior is dysfunctional, frankly. You know, it's because the reality is like we can't save anybody, we can't fix anybody, we can't change anybody, we can't even help anybody unless they have to do it themselves at the end of the day. And true help comes from empowering other people and a lot of times letting them know like you can do it, and maybe even pointing them in the direction of some resources, but like letting them do the work. Like you can do it, have at it. And so, yeah. And that's a lot of pressure if we're putting it on ourselves to be the savior or to be a martyr or to continue to sacrifice ourselves. That's going to that's way out of alignment. And we're going to be incredibly drained and exhausted and resentful and frustrated and just tapped out. Because it's like that Shel Silverstein book, The Giving Tree, which I want to get from the library so we can go over that book. But where people, we give and we give and we give and we give and we give until we have nothing more, thinking that that's somehow love. And it's not, Okay, let's scroll down here. Oh boy. Nikki says, yes, my ex got mad. The therapy was helping me and said, I want to be the one to save you. Oh gosh. Yeah, that's so sick. And it doesn't work, right? I mean, yes. And that's a good one too. Agatha says, okay, this is my new boundary. I'm practicing this week. Don't give advice when not asked for. Just give a word of encouragement. So I don't need to save anyone or help anyone, but can be empowering. Yes. And here's the thing too, and we'll talk more about this in like the book club, but my guess is that everybody experiences different degrees of boundary challenges in different ways. So some people might really struggle with them within a relationship, but some people might struggle with them even more in friendships and they just don't realize it. Or they might have more of that compulsive need to jump in and give unwanted advice and to try to control and to try to fix other people. Even though a lot of people that have kind of that codependency stuff going on, they don't realize that it's control. It's like, no, I'm not controlling. Like, I'm just trying to be helpful. But that can come across as, nagging, and it gets really old really quick if somebody's given us a bunch of unwanted advice. So, and that's one of the things, that I've definitely worked on with friends, or I still have ways to go, but like worked on with friends over time is just practicing, just listening, because most people and it's different here because this is just the way that this whole chat thing is set up. But, most people don't want a bunch of unwanted advice. Most people know what they need to do. They just need to be validated and like encouraged, like I have faith in you that you'll figure it out. And, you're smart and you're capable and you've been down this road before. And, you got it. MZ Wemsyful says, I really struggle with boundaries. It's my biggest issue. When I've tried to set boundaries and assert myself, I've had terrible reactions which have put me off. Yeah. Setting boundaries there's definitely a learning curve to it. And it tends to be uncomfortable. like for a while until it becomes more natural. So like my example, the other day with my friend, and I've used this example before, but there was a time, I'll just talk about me instead of talking about her. But I remember when I was a kid and a telemarketer had called our house, and I had lied to them. And I said, "Oh, my mom's not here." And I hung up the phone. My mom was like, "Who was that?" And I said, "Oh, it was just a telemarketer." And so this dates me, right? Because nobody even has home phones anymore. But like, I said, "Oh, it was just a telemarketer." And she said, "Well, why did you lie to them?" She's like, "I am home." And I was like, "Yeah, but who cares, right?" And that moment has just always stuck with me. So, and it took me a long time to get comfortable just telling the truth over the phone to a total stranger that, yeah, my mom is home, but she's busy, or she doesn't want to talk right now, or can I take a message, or what have you. It takes practice. It takes practice, like letting people know that they can't get their way is really what it is. It takes practice to kind of break that people pleasing and uh, to not be apologetic about it. Postmodern says, "Yep, I've had that exact same conversation with my daughter. I said the exact same thing to her. Good for you. Good for you." Because I think it's um, little learning lessons like that when we are, it might not seem to even matter, right? But it's those things like when we're living an authentic life, a big part of that just means being comfortable with our truth. And modeling that for children, especially, is so powerful. It's just these little ways, like little kind of seemingly insignificant ways that we can practice boundaries and that we can practice living an authentic life and just owning our truth. But I think boundaries too, the boundaries are more difficult to set with people that we've known for a while, because we've been in this dance. We have this routine, this dynamic with them that's been going on for for however long. And so for a person to switch that up, and all of a sudden you're saying no when for 20 years you've said yes, they might feel very confused, very attacked. Is she mad at me? What's going on? uh you know or if they have unhealthy boundaries too, which is oftentimes the case, they might be like, and subconsciously thinking, "Oh, no, 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 no." But you somehow owe me, right? So like, I asked you to babysit this weekend and you said that you can't, but now I'm going to get resentful because I babysat your kids, every single weekend in December. So, you know what I mean? Like, so it's difficult, because if people don't have that open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication, the opposite of that is just chaos, and it's resentment, and it's frustration, and it's hurt feelings. And then more often than not, I would say a lot of these friendships tend to end, because if you're getting more in alignment with yourself and you're just not putting up with stuff and you start getting used to feeling good, you really don't want to go back to the chaos and the pain of feeling bad. But when you're around, new people, they don't know you. So there isn't that dynamic yet. And so then you can really kind of, it's a lot easier to express your boundaries with them, because they don't know any different. And I really, so far with new people in my life, I have found that it's just so much easier. It's just so much easier. And most people don't take things personally, you know? Like if you say no, they're like, "Oh, okay," and then they just go on about their thing. It also shuts down like a lot of manipulation too. So if they're used to, like, for example, I used to live in this condo complex, and it was, oh my gosh, there were four of us in this building, and the neighbor across from me was just something else. So my guess would be, well, hands down, some sort of personality disorder, but I don't know. She was just really something. And then the gal upstairs, uh, we just got along really, really well and totally clicked. And so the other gal was never home, but there was this triangle between us, and this one neighbor would continually just start stuff and stir stuff up. And, you know, she didn't like this other gal's kids, and it was just always something with her. And it was absolutely exhausting. And she would just do bizarre, erratic things and then lie about it. And then, you know, come over, knocking on your door at all hours. And, but then she would do these little nice things like, oh, I bought you a Christmas present and stuff. But you could tell, like, no, there's all these strings attached with that. You know, it's not you being nice, it's you trying to make me feel guilty and make me feel like I somehow need to, you know, let you in or talk to you or participate in all of this chaos. And the other gal and I, the other gal, about a month or so after she moved in, she pulled me aside one day and asked me about the other neighbor and was like, what is up with this woman? And, you know, I was like, yeah, she has a lot of drama. There's a lot of chaos. Just hold your line, you know? And so she did, but yeah, it's, hi. Ingrid is here. Ileana is here. Synth is here. Welcome, welcome. Let's see. Tracy. Yes. She says, can someone say hi? Hi. Hi, Tracy. And James is talking to Nikki, and he says, you just have to learn to not always be there for others because they won't all do the same in return. Yeah. And I think realizing, I don't know. I guess for me, I kind of gotten to the point where, you know, I give my time or my energy or my love or what have you because I want to give it. And it's, you know, I have expectations for the people in my life, and I hope that they reciprocate that. But, you know, if I guess I don't do anything like, especially time wise, right? So like, I don't babysit I don't know, I don't babysit somebody's children, let's say, for example, thinking that they somehow owe me. Like, I don't want to get in that kind of mindset. It's sort of like, well, I'm going to do what I want to do because I want to do it. And then like, just like let that go. Because if I'm keeping score in my mind, then, you know, that's not going to be healthy. But I think that's the difference. It's the difference, I think, between taking action from a place of like fear, obligation, and guilt, and taking action from a place of enjoyment. Like, this is really what I want to do. And this is the time that I can do this. Like, I would love to watch your children. I can't watch them for 12 hours on Saturday or whatever, but I could watch them for 3. And then you just enjoy that time. And then, you know what I mean? So it's that resentment's not building up. That's, at least for me, that's one of my biggest indicators. If I am violating one of my boundaries, is if I start feeling resentful about, you know, towards the other person. Because it's not, I mean, the other people don't know where our boundaries are unless we say something. So I'm gonna eat some of my licorice. So good. Well, I promise I won't chew into the microphone here. So good. I've been on this red licorice kick lately. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Okay. James says, yeah, that's a sucky thing to realize. I refuse to to let the narcissist change me to be cold. I will continue to have a big heart, but just be more selective about it. There you go. Yeah, it can be so easy and understandable to have this kind of stuff change us. Trauma is transformative, but, and I think kind of the default for that is that trauma can make us, it can harden a person. Totally understandable, right? It can make a person bitter and jaded and angry and have really negative major personality changes. But I think, and if anybody wants to read more about this, I would encourage you to read about positive psychology, to read about a principle called post-traumatic growth. And post-traumatic growth, which is one of my favorite topics, is the opposite of post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's this massive amounts of growth that can happen because of trauma. And kind of it only tends to happen because of trauma. So trauma is this catalyst for massive change in our lives and massive positive change. So it can be easy to let that trauma consume us and to not know how do I climb out of this big dark hole that I feel stuck in, you know? But understanding that you can get out of this hole, you can go forward and rebuild, and that there can be a life out there after this. And it can be a long, hard road. I mean, I'm not going to lie, but it's worth it. And there's a lot of stuff that you can squeeze out of this and really make it work for you. Yeah, Little Miss says, yes, Dana, post-traumatic growth is so powerful. That's good. Synth says, I used to think about suicide, never attempted it, but worked out ways I could do it. I don't think about it these days, though. Oh, I'm so glad that you're not thinking about suicide anymore these days, because that can be such a scary, dark place when a person's at that point where they're coming up with a plan, or if they're even just kind of flirting with that idea. And if anybody listening to this is struggling with feeling suicidal, please call a hotline. There's lots of free hotlines out there 24 hours a day. At least here in the United States, you can text 741-741 and get a person that you can text with to kind of get you through those low moments. If need be, calling your emergency services. You might need to get some additional professional help to move through it. It's just very normal. These situations are so intense. So, and I would encourage people to just make the declaration right now that suicide is not an option. Just take that off the table. So sometimes just visualizing yourself doing that, like removing that option off of the table, can really help to kind of rein in your thinking. So it doesn't go to kind of a crazy place like that, And I talked about this before in other videos, but one of the, or I guess a handful of the realizations I had, the first one was, I'm not going to let this end my life. It's kind of the first declaration I made to myself. And the second one was, I'm not going to let this destroy my life. And then the third one was, I'm going to take what happened to me and I'm going to use it for my highest and greatest good. And then the fourth one was, I'm going to take what happened to me and I'm going to try to use it for the highest and greatest good of others. And that was kind of my ladder out of the hole. So yeah, I hope that helps somebody. Okay, let's see. Let's scroll up here. Cherise says, I've never heard the term post-traumatic growth. That's where I'm at with it. Healing, learning from my experiences, and growing. Yes. Yes. There is so much. There's so much on the other side of the pain. And it's like one of those things, like, how does that saying go? If you find yourself walking through hell, just keep walking. A lot of that's very true in these types of situations, that post-traumatic growth. If you can find a way to make that pain work for you, it can be rocket fuel that really takes you to the next level. So, okay. Let's see here. Sable says, I'm just too scared to try suicide. Well, and here's the thing too with suicide is it doesn't stop the pain. It just gives it to somebody else. And I understand. I mean, I've been hospitalized twice for depression. I get it. Like I understand how deep and how dark that hole can be, but I think, you know, to just take that option off of the table. You can get through this. Like you can make this work for you. And uh it's just not a good option. It's just not a good option. Tracy says, I'm kind of like Robin Williams. I only get serious. I only get serious if it's required by law. I like to make people laugh and smile. This was my coping mechanism since 5. Yeah, I think that's probably the case with a lot of comedians. Humor can be a fantastic way to cover up pain. And I would say it's probably one of the more common coping mechanisms that people have, like sarcasm, kind of dark humor, oftentimes, um, or even just kind of telling jokes and being the class clown, that kind of humor. It just it helps to ease the pressure off of a situation, or it can help us. I think with Chris Farley, he might be a good example of this. If you guys remember him, he was hilarious. And he had often said, he was always a really large kid, always been a very large person. And so one of his ways to deal with that is he would make fun of himself. He'd make fun of his weight. And it was like, if he could do it first, then like other people weren't laughing at him, they were laughing with him. And so that was his way of trying to control the bullying and to control the abuse and to control his hurt feelings, because he got people were very focused on his weight his whole life. Agatha says, my therapist, oh gosh, I have to sneeze. Hold on. Excuse me. This room, the cats are normally in here. And I'm only in here about once a week, and there's all this cat hair in here. Ugh. So Agatha says, my therapist asked me to not use joking as a way to disconnect from the problem. This is so hard for me. Yes. And it's so interesting when we start realizing these things about ourselves, of these different, seemingly kind of benign ways that we do disconnect. I mean, I tell you, these experiences, there's no shortage of personal growth and like insight that can come from them. I mean, geez, like I did not realize that I was an emotional eater until, I don't know, 6 months ago, a year ago, maybe. Um, I, yeah, humor is a way that I tend to diffuse things as well. Trying to think of some other. Oh, I could, you could even say that advice giving, you could even say that being in tune with other people's emotions is a kind of more of like a socially acceptable or, um, I don't know, seemingly benign or innocent way of, if we're so in tune with somebody else's emotions, then we're generally out of tune with our own. It's blurring that boundary, because the reality is we don't know what they're thinking and feeling. Only they know what they're thinking and feeling. We can make assumptions, right? Like if they have a broken arm, we can guess that that probably really hurts, but we might have kind of that sympathy pain for them, but they're the ones in tune with their emotions. And so we might be feeling that pain of that broken arm because we're not comfortable with any number of things, setting boundaries, saying no, stuff that's going on in our own life. Of course, to it's so easy to focus on other people and their stuff than it is to actually take the time to sit and be alone with our own. And like we may not even realize it, just because most people, I don't think, ever take the time to really be truly introspective. Stuff is just fascinating. Okay, let's see. Oh, I love that. Maria says, is talking about boundaries and says, now I say that I'm centered and I prepare myself for a potentially bad response. But I say to myself, I am not harming them with my boundary. I am protecting myself, which is my God given right. Yes, absolutely. And, that's one of the things I think so many of us are so used to feeling bad. We say no, we set a boundary, we feel bad, we feel mean, we feel guilty, we feel all of these feelings because, we might be like, I just want to make this other person happy, or, I would want, or just kind of maybe tangled emotion, not even blurred, like just tangled emotions where we think, but I would want somebody to do that for me. You know what I mean? Like, and then we just kind of feel bad saying no. Um, and it takes a while to get that stuff straightened out. And, but, once we realize that, like, really nobody else can make us feel a certain way, they can try, they can for sure try. I think we've all been there, right? Or somebody really tries to use sympathy or guilt or pity or these kinds of things to pull at our heartstrings and to try to make us feel guilty. But it's up to us at the end of the day if we're actually going to accept that or not. So I guess to me, it helps to kind of view problematic people as almost like little kids. When you set a boundary with a little kid, you're not doing it really to punish them. You're kind of creating these different teachable moments, you know? And they might try all kinds of things to make you feel bad. Like they're crying and they're screaming and they're pouting and they're like, telling you that they hate you and that you're not my mommy, and like all kinds of stuff that they're throwing out in order to get their way. But if you can see it for what it is, and you just kind of sit there and like, well, you can be mad all you want, but no is no. Like your bedtime is 9 o'clock. This, we go through this every single night. Like it's not a shocker anymore. So, you can cry, you can pout, you can hate me, you can do all these things, but bedtime is still 9 o'clock. I know I'm so mean and cruel and terribly unreasonable, but bedtime is still 9 o'clock. And you just don't accept it. Okay. Let's see. And really too, like once you can see the manipulations especially within adults for what they are, you just seriously roll your eyes at it. Like there does come a point where you're just like, oh, give me a break. You just don't even buy into it. Where maybe the old you would have really fallen right into that and just been completely puppeteered by this other person who is, they're threatening suicide, and they're saying they call you crying that they need you and that only you can save them and that they love you, and just words, 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 right? And they're trying to evoke all these different emotions to really push your buttons to get to their puppeteering. But once you see it, you're like, no, we're not doing that anymore. If you're suicidal, I'm calling 911. If, you might love me, you might think I can save you. Like, I don't want to save you. Like, I want a partner, not a project. Like, go save yourself. Like Maria said, go save yourself. Go get into therapy and go figure this stuff out. I don't want you changing for me. I don't want you doing this stuff. Like, you need to do this for you. Like, don't put that on me. I'm not going to own any of your nonsense. Like, that's on you. Very empowering when you can get to that point. People are asking, where's Missouri Cowboy? It's so funny that you say that. I was just thinking that exact same thing, that I hadn't seen him on. I don't know. I don't know where he is. Sunny Day says, yeah, I need more one-liners to shut down narcissists. Well, it's anticipating. They tend to push the same buttons over and over again because that's what's worked in the past. And so if you can anticipate that happening, then it can be easier to kind of come up with, to prepare yourself emotionally, but also to come up with some responses, Elizabeth says, I like it when Dana says it's their addiction or their disorder talking. That I will say, as far as one-liners go, that's the most effective line I have had with working with people struggling with addiction or alcoholism of any kind, like any type of addiction, eating disorders, alcoholism, meth, you name it. Like, I just, I would tell them, like, if they would get upset with me and they're like, you don't trust me, I need to have, 3 prescriptions, or I need to have this. And they take it so personal. I've been sober now for 6 months. I can't believe that you won't do this. And you're treating me like I'm a criminal and this, that, and the other. And just to say, you know what? I trust you. I think you're an awesome person. I don't trust your addiction. And sometimes I might even add in, like, I want to see you succeed. And I hope that you understand. But yeah, making it about if their behavior, especially if it's trust related, like if they want something, if they want to borrow money, if they want to borrow your car, if they want to, be alone in a house with alcohol or pills or what have you, just to say, I trust you all day long, but I don't trust your addiction at all. So that can be helpful. Okay. Okay, good. Cynthia says, I know that my wine consumption has gone up since I moved out in the middle of the night 3 weeks ago, but I'm aware of it and I will keep it in check. Good. That's huge. And again, it's so easy for people to self-medicate during this time, whether that's with shopping or alcohol or drugs or sleep or, sex. Often, although most people that are fresh out of these things don't want to have sex for like years afterwards, but people tend to self-medicate in like a wide variety of ways. And so if you can I think another part of this that can be so insightful is figuring out how do I normally cope with stress? And is this the way that I want to cope with stress? And like, what healthier ways could I use to cope with stress? And so it's good that you're aware of, like, you know what, Like I've been knocking back, whatever, a bottle, 3 bottles, whatever it is a night. I know this isn't healthy, but this is what's working right now. I don't want to be here at this place drinking this much in a week from now or in a month from now. But also, I would say during that time, kind of getting clear on like, okay, let's just like kind of brainstorm a plan, because nobody, again, like nobody plans to be addicted to anything either, right? So, or that they don't really plan on becoming an alcoholic, and the next thing you know, that happens too. If you can kind of get clear on some healthier ways to cope, like what else could I do that would help me cope? You know, uh, going to the gym, going to yoga, painting pottery. There's those paint your own pottery places, which are really, that can add up. That can get really expensive really quick, but that's something that a person could do. Taking up crafts of some kind, putting together puzzles, um, taking hot baths, taking up some sort of hobby, playing an instrument, learning a language, throwing yourself into something, maybe even, and if you don't have the energy for that, or if that's just too expensive or too time consuming or what have you, even to think about, okay, what is a healthier coping mechanism than what I'm doing right now? So maybe that's just numbing out by watching, I don't know, if your favorite TV show, like a whole season of your favorite TV show, and just be like, yep, I binge watch on this one TV show. And I would say at the same time, okay, so we were talking about like figuring out kind of different like coping different coping methods and stuff. It can also be a good time to figure out ways that you can love yourself during all of this. Just don't wait to get healed to start your self-love. Like now is as good a time as any. So doing things like getting clear, like writing out a list. How can I support myself during this? And I've mentioned this multiple times, but one of the things that I did during all of this is I had an anchor color, which is the color red. It's still my anchor color. And that to me represented love, right? Not like wildly creative there, but like self-love. And I bought towels that were red. I wish I had bought like a pillowcase or a bathrobe or something else that was red, but I bought a lot of like other little things that were just red. And those were my kind of they ended up becoming more like subconscious reminders to myself that I mattered. So I would get out of the shower and I'd wrap myself in in a nice warm red towel. It's like giving myself a hug. I have my mug, my red mug, doing things like that are just these constant reminders of, hey, it's like your inner self letting you know, hey, you know what? Like we can get through this. You just got to keep going. Just keep going. Sarah says, I love everything orange. Yes, orange is a fantastic color. So yeah, finding your color, orange, purple, green, blue, and making that your color, and finding items. You can even tell other people that are maybe in your like friends or family or whoever that are in your life, like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And I plan on maybe you plan on having these items kind of forever, and it's amazing. People, when they realize like, this is my item, this is my color, right? Like this is my self-love color. Oftentimes people will start finding, people that support you in all of this will start finding items in that color and then giving them to you. And it's just such an awesome way to kind of getting support from other people. But you can definitely do it for yourself. I didn't have that many supportive people in my life when I was going through all of this. It was so freaking awful, God. I don't know. I really don't know how I got through it. And I don't know how I got through it twice. It was just, but you know what though? I found strength I didn't know that I had. So, you know. Okay, let's see here. And Ginger is saying, excellent mantras to tell yourself if having suicidal thoughts. Yeah, mantras in general. I'm a huge fan of them. Whether you designate one word or a whole phrase, or you have multiple phrases going, or what have you, those can be really powerful. You might want to write them down on flashcards and just kind of go through them, just really feeding your brain, training your brain, getting your brain focused on this is the direction that we're heading. Like, I know that you feel blown apart emotionally, but this is the direction that we're heading in, and we can do this, you know? And so affirmations are absolutely huge. I did a video, it was a couple weeks ago, on affirmations for kind of moving through post-traumatic stress disorder. You can find it on YouTube. It's an 8-hour video, but only, I don't know, the first 20 or so minutes are affirmations. The rest is just relaxation kind of music and stuff. But feeding your brain, being very aware of what you're feeding your brain, especially if you have PTSD, realizing that right now caffeine and anything that's overly stimulating is probably not the best path to go down. So watching the news nonstop, watching, you know, uh, movies that cause spikes in your adrenaline, like horror movies or any type of like just jumpy, scary, traumatic, dramatic kind of movies, right now, that not helpful. um, trying to watch things that make you really, in general, like just not even just watching things, but being like extra gentle with yourself and feeding your brain and your body and all of it just as much goodness as you possibly can. Focus on feeling good. Focus on just peace, maybe. Focus on peace. Focus on nourishing yourself. One of the things that I did too is during that time I bought a juicer. So oh gosh. And I was really starting to kind of get into cooking during that whole time, but I was really big into juicing. And that was kind of my thing. It was like a small way of kind of reclaiming my health and just making myself a priority was, juicing. Like, I matter. I deserve to have vitamins and minerals and to be good to my body. So, for what that's worth. Destiny says, but at the same time, don't we need to know what's going on in the world? No. No, we don't. I will tell you, I have not personally, I have not owned a TV in close to 8 years. And I watch YouTube. I didn't even used to do that. Like, I didn't really start watching YouTube until I started a YouTube channel. So I was very much like in a bubble. And I had friends that would get so upset with me because I literally had no idea what was going on in the world. But I was like, you know what? I'll hear about it, because most of the stuff, we have no control over it, and if it's like really major stuff, other people are going to be talking about it. So, and if you're concerned about kind of keeping up with current events and whatnot, I would maybe think of it this way: as far as like the next 6 months or so, it's okay. It's okay to take a break from media and from news and from technology in general if you want, and just kind of unplug, because that stuff it hyper stimulates us, especially news stuff. It's all about doom and gloom because it catches people's attention, and that's how they get ratings and all that. But yeah, at a minimum, so Scuba Girl is talking about trying some soothing music, and she says it's much better. Also allows you to do some chores. She says, I feel guilty if I let things slide. So yes, I would agree. I would agree with that. Soothing music. There's you at a minimum, something that you might be interested in doing is Jason Stevenson and Michael Seeley are like my two go-to affirmation guided imagery people. They are fantastic at what they do. So they have a whole bunch of videos, and that can really be a great time, or that's just your time at night. And you can listen to these kind of guided imagery things just to help you decompress. Little things like this really do make a huge, huge difference. Somebody's talking about songs and says, yes, songs are all about codependent thoughts or predator thoughts. I would agree. There's that no shortage of like toxic love garbage lyrics out there. But the concept of songs, so you can always create a playlist of empowering songs or creating different playlists for different moods, right? So like you could create like a relaxation playlist, or you could create a empowering, hear me roar kind of a playlist. Or do you see what I'm saying? And so you're creating these music playlists based on how you want to feel. And so if you're feeling kind of discouraged or depressed or anxious or what have you, then all you've got to do is just turn on your playlist and let that music kind of help get you in that mood. Yes, Banaz, I agree, says diffusers, essential oils, herbal teas, and a comfy bed. Absolutely. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Daniel C says 80s hair metal is upbeat for me. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. Uh, let's see. Where was Adriana says she only wants to surround herself with healthy people and friendships. I would like to spend time with people whose company I enjoy. I think that's a very good goal to set, you know? Just in that zone, when you're around, I tell you, it's so nice when you can find those people whose company that you just really enjoy, and that you can, that you feel safe around. It's a huge, huge thing. And it might take a little while to find some of those people. You've probably heard me talk before, but I'm a huge fan of meetup.com. It can be they're worldwide. Many of the groups are free, very low cost. It's not a dating site. Um, some of the groups involve children too, where it's like, single parents day out kind of a thing, where they take kids to the park or to movies or, whatever. There's just all different kinds of groups out there. So it can be a really great way to meet some new people in your area and to do some new fun things, and to practice boundaries and kind of, getting kind of honed into your intuition and all of that. Ooh, I do too. Postmodern says, I love the Eurythmics. Yes. Annie Lennox. She is amazing. I love her. Oh, I love that. Agatha says, me and my friend are starting meetup group to inspire and grow together in all the healthy ways. I love it. That is so cool. Were you here, Agatha, when we were talking about the new group that we're starting? The 3-6. Oh, I'll just say it again since we've been going for a while now. I am starting, if you just hopped on, I am starting a new Facebook group. We're going to be opening it up tomorrow. It's called 365 I Thrive. And it's going to be all about us and our healing. And we're not going to be talking about narcissism or narcissists or personality disorders or like abuse outside of the context of our boundaries. So as boundaries and standards and examining all of this stuff and how it pertains to us, and hopefully people sharing tips and tricks and strategies and their own experiences, and uh, hopefully their own aha moments. There's a post now in the Facebook group that we have that I started back in October, and I keep bumping it like every so often. It's to me, it's one of the most helpful posts with other people that have chimed in, and it's called Old Me versus New Me. And so what people have been doing is we'll go through and we'll have like a scenario where, you know, like old me, you know, if a coworker hit on me, old me would have felt really awkward about it, embarrassed, uh, guilty, and uncertain how to handle it. And old me would have not said anything until things got really bad, and then probably freaked out and yelled at the person. New me, would have kind of nipped that in the bud and say, hey, don't, I don't appreciate being talked to like that, or that's not appropriate. New me would have shut that down a lot sooner. Our old me would have felt obligated to, go home for Christmas, even though my mother is awful to me. New me realizes, or to stay for, 3 weeks over Christmas. The new me realizes I can only do 3 days before I'm climbing the walls. Or new me realizes that it's not enjoyable at all for me to go home. And so I'm going to Skype with my family, and I'm going to send Christmas presents or whatever. So it helps for us to share kind of old me versus new me. And it helps other people kind of see that progression with boundaries, because this is such new stuff for so many people, Nikki says, why is it that we feel bad or shame for the abuser? I think a lot of it is it's blurred boundaries, and it's taking responsibility for somebody else's emotions. And if they oftentimes twist things, they do a really good job of that. So they might, if a person's blaming you for something, you ruined my life. I can't believe you're leaving me. I did so much for you. I've never loved anyone like you. And this is how you're going to repay me. Like, you called the cops on me. You ruined my life. That kind of stuff. When a person hears stuff like that and they're not familiar with boundaries, they can feel like they're to blame. Like, oh no, I guess, I'm not totally innocent, like we were fighting together. And isn't that what goes on? Relationships, aren't they 50-50? And like, he only yelled at me because I forgot to buy ketchup at the store. But it's partially my fault. If I had remembered that, then he wouldn't have yelled at me. But it's not the case. That's the thinking that a lot of targets of abuse have. But the reality is that abuse is never okay. So it's kind of getting untangled from this emotional manipulator and kind of realizing, okay, what am I responsible for? And what is another adult responsible for as far as their own feelings and actions? And just like not accepting stuff. If they're like, oh, you owe me this, or I did so much for you, or you're this, that, and the other, name calling and that kind of stuff, just realizing this is all very childish and inappropriate. Like, no, dude, I don't need to stick around. Like, I don't want to be your mother or your therapist or your nurse, or, like, I don't want to fix you. I see this a lot in the therapist. I see this a lot in the support groups where people feel bad. They're like, I'm sending my abuser to jail tomorrow, and I feel awful. And, it's one of the things we have to really talk about of, no, you're not sending him to jail. His behavior is sending him to jail. It's a big difference there. But it's difficult for a person to see things straight when they've been manipulated for so long. Okay, let's see. This chat's going fast. Hold on a second here. Agatha says, I took responsibility for the abuse. My therapist's words, I did that. I needed to let it go. I wanted to be in a place of some control over my life. And so I made a story of how I was responsible for it. Yep, absolutely. And so for people, if a person's in an abusive relationship and they don't want to leave, then the only other option is for them to justify staying. Of course, all of this stuff happens subconsciously, right? Like nobody's thinking to themselves, oh, I'm going to justify his behavior because I don't really want to leave. Like that's not crossing anybody's mind. But if we don't want to leave, then we're going to have to justify staying. And one of the common ways we justify staying is by sharing the blame. Keeping in mind too, if I just, like if a person's not aware of boundaries and manipulation and how boundaries get pushed, I think really anybody could fall into this. I really, really do. Oftentimes, frankly, it's the people that have healthy boundaries most likely started off having very unhealthy boundaries. It took these kinds of situations for them to learn how to build healthy boundaries. So, it's just difficult. It's difficult to navigate this stuff when you're in it and you don't know any different and you think that it is your fault. Every single person in an abusive relationship that I've ever come across has thought that they shared some blame in things, male or female, and then they start focusing, because again, if their mindset is, I don't want to leave, then they've got to figure out, well, then how can I stay? And it's very common for the next step in that progression of thinking to be, well, then I just need to do different and be different. And then that'll somehow stop the abuse. If I can just remember to buy ketchup at the store, then he won't hit me again. If I can just remember, okay, he sleeps, during the day because he works nights. And so I need to remember to have the kids quiet and the pets quiet, and then we can't watch TV. And then if we do all that, then he won't yell at me. And okay. And then he doesn't like the fact that I wear makeup and that I go out with my girlfriends, I don't know, every once a week, or I talk to my mom once a week. And so I'll just do that different. I won't do that anymore. And that's what people start doing. They start walking on eggshells and they start trying to change themselves, thinking that they could somehow change, that they can placate the abuser, and then they can make this situation somehow tolerable. But it never, ever works, because the abuse was never about us to begin with. It's their personality, So, because we all get frustrated, right? Like we all have these things, but it's one thing to be frustrated, but it's never okay to be abusive. And abusive people, they feel justified in all of their behavior. So for them, in order for a person to feel justified in taking an action, they have to concoct this whole story in their head as to why they're right about what they're doing. So they have it worked up that, hey man, like, yeah, I yelled at you. You forgot the ketchup. It's not my fault. I yelled at you. You forgot the ketchup. You didn't forget the ketchup. I wouldn't have yelled at you. But do you see how immature that is, and how that's not the way that a healthy adult thinks? So, if you start getting into the mindset of like a really dysfunctional person that's got all this kind of twisted ways of thinking, then it can lead a person just down a path of madness and trying to anticipate their behavior. But you can't, because their behavior is so erratic, because it's whatever they want in the moment. And they have this idea of, well, you should just know, like, you should be a mind reader. there was an article posted in the support group the other day about a gal in the UK who I don't know if she was married to him. She might have been married to they were together for a few years. And anyways, she was watching Britain's Got Talent, and the guy came home, opens the door, sees Britain's Got Talent on the show, on TV, gets really upset, and gets the dog and takes the dog for a walk. And so she said, she's like, I just kind of figured he was in a bad mood, whatever. And then he came home, was giving her like a bunch of attitude. And anyways, long story short, he ends up like horrifically physically assaulting her, pretty much knocking her unconscious, leaving her for dead. And it was all over this TV show, and it was over her standing up to him. You know, she said, she's like, I thought he was joking, like he was so upset. But that's the thing, like it's always trying to hit a moving target with trying to anticipate their needs, because you know, he might have come home one day and been like, oh, let's watch something funny, I want to watch Britain's Got Talent. But then that day, for whatever reason, he didn't want to watch it, you know? And even still, like, it's never okay to flip out and abuse somebody because they do things differently. Ugh. Yes, not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Not your fault. Not your fault. You didn't cause it. You can't control it. You didn't deserve it. Your love can't save them. Your love can't change them. There's nothing that you could have done differently as far as changing the outcome of things. And if you're one of the many people that might be watching this and you're like, but Dana, I see, you know, now they're on Facebook and they're putting all these pictures, they seem so happy with the next person. And I really feel like it might have been me. It might have been me. And like, this is just absolutely killing me that they've moved on so quickly. And there's all these pictures talking about how happy they are. And I've even heard from, you know, his or her or whatever new partner that they're so happy and that they treat them so well and all these things. So it must have been me. What you're most likely experiencing is the idealized cycle for the next target. This is the honeymoon phase for the next target. It's this cycle of abuse. It will not last. Abusive people are abusive people. You know, it's not even it's not you, and it's not even their behavior that's the problem. It's their mindset that drives their behavior. That's the problem. So, and that stuff it's not like you flip a switch and it's all better. You know, if anything, abuse tends to get worse over time. It doesn't get better. So it's not you. Oh, thank you, River Song, for the donation. It says, thank you, Dana. You are so very welcome. I like that name, River Song. It's nice. Oh gosh, this chat's flying. That's a really great point, Lucy. Lucy's talking to Kevin and says, you know, it's very common, I think, for people to think that it's them. And Lucy says, because as my therapist has told me many times, if it was you, then you could control it. That's spot on. And the fact that we can't control it and nothing we do, there's not enough eggshells in the world to stop it, goes to show that it's not us, you know? Nikki says, wow, that is so good. Right? Like, I really, really like that. Okay, let's see. I'm scrolling up here. Agatha says, yes, my ex is married to my ex best friend. I have to say, she is pretending very well to be happy. So it got me to think he wasn't an abuser. It was just me. Yeah, it makes total sense. You know what? Every target's idealized cycle is different and it lasts different amounts of time. And, but most people, when they're in an abusive relationship, they tend to go to great lengths to try to prove to themselves and to the outside world that they're so happy. And you could probably see this to a lesser extent, on Facebook. People post, I love my husband, like world's greatest husband. He's so wonderful. And they're posting pictures of them together and like flowers and, all this kind of stuff. But if you've ever known people like this and you're like, what are you talking about? Like, that their reality is very, very different, or that she's not in love with him at all, or that he's an absolute nightmare to live with, or that he's not in love with her, or she's cheating on him. Do you know what I mean? Like, what people present to the world and what is really going on are oftentimes two very different things. I'm almost to the point now where when people talk about how happy they are with their partner, to me, I kind of jump to taking the reverse as true. Because really, people, if you're so happy with your partner, then there's not that need to let the world know. It's just like, man, you let your partner know, and you show it in ways that are private, but you don't need to like splash it all over the internet. And it's weird. People are weird. Social media is weird. Oh gosh, Maria, totally. Maria's talking to Lucy and says, I honestly blamed myself because I didn't see the missing tools. I didn't know that a boundaryless life is dangerous, and I didn't know the tools I needed. Absolutely. Yep. I think it was Pia Melody who said in one of her, I think it must have been one of her videos. I don't think I've ever read any of her books, but she said, basically codependency, if it's left untreated, can lead to death. And I agree completely. It can lead to a premature death through drugs and alcohol or other types of unhealthy coping. It can lead to suicide, or it can lead to murder. If a person really they're not in tune with their boundaries and they're putting everybody else first, and they can't tell if a person is safe or if they're dangerous, or if the situation is safe or if the situation's dangerous, then it's like walking through life, and it's a crapshoot. Everything is just a big crapshoot at that point, because we're not able to navigate our life effectively. It's terrifying. I mean, I look back on things now. I just like, whoo, yikes. It's like you realize, oh my God, I was like walking a tightrope in so many situations and didn't even realize it. It's just terrifying. And it's terrifying to look back and think, man, there were some really dicey, stupid situations that I got myself into that I didn't even realize were dangerous, And I just like totally was misreading that whole situation, and like was just very innocent and way too trusting, and I shouldn't have been. So scary. But the good news is, people talk too about having trouble trusting again. I will tell you, a big piece of that puzzle is in learning to keep yourself safe. It's truly is. It's making, I'm sorry, this chair is so creaky and I'm so scared it's just going to fall apart. Can you see this? I shouldn't even tempt fate, because like, it's really rickety. Anyways, with, what was I saying? Oh, trusting other people. So if we can make that shift, instead of focusing on them and being like, I really want to find a good person, I really want to find somebody I can trust. But where so many of us have been going wrong is what we've been doing is taking other people, especially total strangers, especially attractive total strangers, at face value and being like, okay, they seem friendly. They seem friendly, so therefore I'm going to make them into a friend, even though I don't know them. I'm going to let my guard down. I'm going to be so quick to trust them. I'm going to open up whatever. I'm going to loan them money. I'm going to let them into my life. I'm going to let them move in with me. I'm going to sleep with them. I'm going to do all these things and just let down my guard and take them at face value and hope that they don't break that trust. And when we make the shift into realizing other people are going to be themselves, and it's up to us to try to figure out if they match our criteria. So instead of focusing on, oh, I hope they choose me. Oh, that guy, he's so hot. I really hope that he wants to date me. Or I really like that girl. She's so cool. I really want to be friends with her. Instead of trying to focus on being chosen, gosh, we are focused on being choosy and thinking to ourselves, I'll see if I like them and we'll see if they're a good fit for my life. And, and then realizing, okay, you know what, I'm going to take things slow. And if they're not for me, and if I realize I can't, I can't trust them, like that analogy in that Brene Brown book that we read a few months ago, The Daring Greatly. And she talks about trust being a marble jar where, a person behaves appropriately, you drop a little trust marble in, and as the marble jar grows, so does your level of trust in them grows. But if they do something, they lie about something seemingly insignificant, they do something squirrely, a marble comes out of the trust jar. So trust takes time, and it's built upon appropriate behavior. It's not built on empty promises. It's not built on, yes, I promise, you can trust me. If we get married, I'll get sober. Or if we get married, I'll never hit you again. Or I told you, like, I'm in therapy and, you should just trust me. Or God, that was so, you living in the past. And it's like, no, that was 6 months ago. And you were, I don't know, you did X, Y, and Z and whatever. But, trust just takes time. It takes time to build up. And once we realize, we make that shift that you have the power. You are in 100% control. And if you want to walk away from a person or a situation, you can. And if a person might hurt you, their actions might be hurtful, but then that's up to you to decide, okay, is this worth dumping out that whole marble jar over? Is it one of your deal breakers? Or is this an event that you take out one marble? I mean, only you can navigate that. But once you realize, okay, you know what? They're humans, they're human beings. And if they do something that's outrageous or in conflict with my boundaries or my standards, I can at least trust myself to move myself to safety. I'm not relying on them to have appropriate behavior. Like, they either will or they won't. Time will tell. But then you're going to respond appropriately. And when you realize that you have the power, it makes a person feel a lot better, because then it just seems less random. Whereas before, I think a lot of us were like, well, I just, I really like them, and I really hope they like me, and I really hope they treat me right. And then if they don't, then we just hang on and get dragged through hell until we can't hold on any longer, thinking that that's what love was, or that's what friendship was, Vegan Yogi, okay, good point, says, someone here just mentioned why our intuition is on mute when we are abused. Why is that? It's denial, I think, in large part. So again, if a person is in a situation that they don't want to leave, that they have an emotional investment in, this happens to all of us in many different ways. especially with abuse, but in a job or, you know, possibly any other belief system we might have, whether that's maybe with religion or with being involved in a certain group or having, friends or what have you. If a human being is emotionally invested in a situation being something other than what it is, they will not listen to anything else. Their intuition, their friends, their family, their priest, their therapist, they're not going to want to see it for anything other than what it is. Just like we were talking about earlier. And so what's very common is they're like, no, 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 no. This can work because it has to work. That's their mindset. This can work. This can be changed because it has to, because I'm not going to leave. So therefore it has to work out. I can't, if your religion's telling you you can't get divorced, then your only option is to try to make it work, right? So, or if your person's back is against the wall financially and they're like, I can't afford to leave, or I'm terrified to leave, or I don't know how to be, I don't know. I married him when I was 18. I don't know how, and I'm 38. I don't know how to pay bills. I don't know how to balance my checkbook. My mother, one of her good friends was in an abusive marriage for, I don't even remember how long, 40 years, I want to say. She didn't know how to do anything. She was terrified. And she had to learn, and she learned when she was probably in her 70s, how to balance a checkbook, how to, do, how to set up a budget, how to kind of do a lot of things that most people have some sort of idea how to do. It was incredibly stressful for her, So I get it when people stay, it's scary. Change in general is scary, but you can develop a plan. There are resources out there. People can help you learn all this stuff, you know? But yes, so I think that's one of the main reasons that we silence our intuition. I had mentioned this before, one of the questions I really liked about kind of getting around that was from Neil deGrasse Tyson. And he was talking about denial in terms of people that believed that we never went to the moon. And so it was on a Joe Rogan podcast, and Joe Rogan was like, what do you say to these people? How do you convince them? And Neil deGrasse Tyson said, you know what? I don't try to convince them because they're not going to listen. He said, so what he started doing is he would ask them, what piece of information or evidence could I provide that would make you change your mind? And generally, they would say nothing. So then he was, because he would say like, okay, could I provide you a moon rock? Could I provide you with photos? Could I provide you with an interview with an astronaut? Like, what would it take for you to believe that this actually happened? But they were like, nope, we're never going to believe that happened. They're like, oh, it's part of the, the Illuminati is the conspiracy, and they never went to the moon, and it was all in Hollywood. And of course, most people have a compelling argument for why they believe what they believe, right? So like, he just was like, okay, I'm not going to argue with you. When talking to a person or talking to ourselves in terms of an abusive relationship, it can be really helpful to get clear on, where is my line in the sand? Like, what would it take for me to leave or for me to question what's going on? At what point does it become a problem? And getting really, really clear, because this stuff is such a slippery slope. It's a slow descent downward. There was a gal in the support group who was in a cult, and I was asking her that on like a month or so ago about, at what point did you realize that you were in a cult? Because nobody thinks they're in a cult, right? People think, no, this is just my religious group. These are like-minded people. Like, they probably joke about it. Like, people probably think we're in a cult. Like, we're not in a cult, And she had said she really didn't see it as a problem. She didn't think that it was, you know, anything problematic until they began kind of controlling what she was eating. And then there began kind of getting kind of strange requirements around food and around clothing. And then that was kind of her wake up call of, I'm basically like, I'm losing my autonomy. And it's not about what I want, or it's not about free will anymore. It's about kind of the rules of the cult dictating what I'm doing and what I'm not doing. So I think it's kind of, long story short, I think it's important for us to turn inward and to examine, okay, at what point does something become a problem? And then to really tighten that up as much as we can. And I talked about this before too, like with boundaries, old me really thought kind of like, okay, like abuse, addiction, adultery were my deal breakers. Mainly cheating. If I found out, but old me needed concrete proof. Like I needed more than the smoking gun. Like I needed the body. And 9 times out of 10 or 9.95% or times out of 10, like you're not going to have the body. Like you're only going to have the smoking gun. So old me would have needed concrete proof that there was indeed a problem. Whereas new me was like, no, like I don't even do perpetually confusing relationships anymore, or crazy making. Those are my two new boundaries. If stuff starts getting into that area where there's like mental anguish and ongoing introspection, is it me? Is it them? Do I have the issues? Do they have the issues? I'm losing sleep. I can't focus. I can't think straight. I'm at the point where it's like, if it costs me my mental health or my inner peace, it's not worth it. I don't care if it's me or them. Like it doesn't matter. It just doesn't work for me, and that's good enough. So getting clear on kind of where is your line with stuff. Vera B says exactly. What are you guys talking about? I'm scrolling up here. Sable says, God, I love my Dana. Oh, thank you. Oh, good. Thank you, Carol. And you were so welcome. She says, Dana, you have a true gift in explaining things so clearly. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I think more often than not, I feel like I'm just rambling. And then at the end of every live stream, I think, boy, I really hope that made sense to somebody. That's what I tend to think. So I'm glad. I'm glad that it made sense to you tonight. Okay, let's see. Scrolling up here. Yep, Scuba Girl says exactly right. Mental peace is the line. Yeah, I think that's just such a good boundary to have. And oh, it's just, I get so excited like when people, when the lights do start going on for people and they start connecting things, and they're like, yeah, and oftentimes, and thank you, Banaz. Thank you for the live stream donation. Says, thank you, Dana, for your love and support. You are so welcome. Thank you. It's so cool when people start making these connections and they're like, you know what? Yeah, I totally fallen into that. I was doing that too. Then when you really start, it's like pulling a string on a sweater. And then you start realizing, oh my gosh, I came to this YouTube channel or my website or whatnot. I thought that I came here because of my ex-husband or because of my ex-wife. And now I never realized that, yeah, you know what, actually, I had a very similar dynamic with some friends of mine or with my mother or with these other people. And you just start seeing just like doom, 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 like all these rings out. And it can be very overwhelming at first, but it's also very exciting when these new connections are made, because it's just like different parts of your brain are coming online, and you just start seeing the world in a very different way. And in there, and I will just say too, there is a period that can last kind of for a while where you might be wondering, am I seeing narcissists everywhere, or what's going on, and other people telling you, oh, you're making a big deal out of nothing, and there's, the world is full of primarily good people and love, and you got to love again, and just trust, and and a lot of that stuff is just well-intended bad advice, because they're not seeing things clearly, but if they've never had something like this happen, then they're not awake to it, you know? So, but it can really make a person question themselves, like, okay, somebody also said in the support group the other day about kind of books that they were reading and stuff. And I found this to be very interesting because, like I said, like I'm 6+ years out, and there are many times where I'll find myself, I have forgotten certain phases in healing and certain phases in understanding. And I'll read posts and I'm like, oh my, yes, I totally remember when I was thinking that. And anyways, but this person was saying, they were like, I have all these books on narcissism and sociopathy, and I have all these books on PTSD. Am I missing anything else? And there was just that realization of that was me. I think that's probably most of us when we're going through this stuff, was we kind of think, okay, it's understanding the narcissist and it's understanding PTSD, and then that's healing. But the big piece of the puzzle that a lot of people are missing, myself included, for a long time, was understanding about boundaries and understanding about getting in tune with your intuition and getting in alignment with yourself. That's the gift. That's the big gift in all of this, is the realization that you have been out of alignment with yourself. Even if you were totally in alignment with yourself before, which you probably weren't, because most people aren't, you most likely are not now, So like learning what that means, it's just powerful, powerful stuff. And it's exciting when that piece of the puzzle starts snapping into place and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so like such a game changer, Oh, Cynthia, you're so welcome. She says, thank you, Dana. I left my narcissist 3 weeks ago, and I literally feel like you are somewhat saving my life. I never knew these people existed with a playbook. Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, good for you for leaving. And 3 weeks out is that, that first month or so is rough. So glad you're here. Um, you know, you're on the path. You're on the path, and it can be such an exciting journey. So, just keep moving forward. Be extra good to yourself right now. And, sorry, this cat hair in this room. One of the realizations that I had when I was going through all this was, I'm going to be going, if a person's taken suicide off the table, right? Like that's not an option. Then they're left with, well, I'm just going to be going through this. And then one day I had this realization, of, if I'm going to be going through this, the one thing that I knew for certain is that I was never going to go through this and think to myself, boy, I really wish I would have worried about things more. Like that is like the one thing. So I want to kind of pass that along to you, that when you're a year out from this, or 6 months out, or 6 years, or whatever, you're not going to look back at this moment and think, boy, I really wish I was, harder on myself about this, or I really wish I would have worried about things more, or I really wish I would have, you know, uh, no, like none of that. If anything, you'll look back on yourself today and think, I really wish I would have tripled up on my self-care. I wish I would have hunkered down and with some popcorn and a good movie and a bubble bath and painted my nails and just tripled up on my self-care, whatever that might mean to you, on like a regular basis. Because you're gonna get through this, but you might as well get through it in the most comfortable, enjoyable way possible, right? So just just something that I felt was worth passing on. Roy, thank you for the live stream donation. I appreciate you guys. And thank you again, Cynthia, for your donation. And for those of you that are new, if you didn't hear me talking about it earlier, I have started so I have two Facebook groups, just in case you might not even know that. I have two Facebook groups now. So I have one that's called Thrive After Abuse. If you go to join, make sure that you're joining the group. It's a closed group and that you're not just liking the page. It's important that you join the group if you want to participate in the discussions. So so there's that group on Facebook, and that group is all about helping people asking questions and giving answers and supporting each other and trying to figure out all of this abuse and kind of all of the many questions. The new group is called 365 I Thrive, and we're going to be opening it up tomorrow and letting people in. It's going to be all about healing focused, boundaries, PTSD, just examining all of this, assertive communication, practicing it. We're going to be doing kind of examples. We're going to just really be talking about, what are healthy relationships and what is healthy communication, and what are healthy boundaries, and what are unhealthy boundaries, and what is unhealthy communication, and what is what are unhealthy relationships, and all of this, and really focusing on kind of comparing and contrasting the two, and having everybody chime in. And to me, that's where the magic happens, is hearing from other people is just really powerful. So. And two, if you're new here, this live stream thing we do is every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we go for about 3 hours. And yes, and now YouTube doesn't have the timer. What time do we start? So we would normally end at 11:30. Is that right? I'm really trying to get better with time. So we'll do our kind of grounding meditation thing here we'll start that in about 4 minutes. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, and if you are new, I have 2 books out right now. They're only, oh my God, it's IKEA. Oh my, this thing is going to totally fall apart. Oh my gosh. This is so not good. I have 2 books on Amazon right now. They're only in ebook form. Hopefully they will be in paperback by the 1st of February. It's just gone on a lot longer than I was hoping it would, but you can search for my name on Amazon, Dana Morningstar, and you can see those books. One's called Start Here, and that book is a crash course guide. Like if you are new here and you are confused and you're like, there's all these words, a flying monkey and new supply and cycle of abuse and all of these things that can be so smear campaign and projection and all of this stuff. It can be very overwhelming. That book has all of the most common terms used, and it has a whole frequently asked questions section in there. It really helps to get a person up to speed. At least that's my intention, is to help get people up to speed as quickly as possible. And then my second book is called Out of the Fog, and it compares and contrasts a lot of very commonly confused concepts. So it kind of builds off of the first book. So it compares the difference between, like commitment and codependency, love, and I think I do love and trauma bonding, sincere remorse versus insincere remorse. There's, I would say, like the 40 or so different concepts. The difference between a person being friendly and a person being a friend, difference between like a parent and a predator, these kinds of things. It really spells it out as clearly as I can. And I don't know. I'm biased. I wrote them, but they're and speaking of which, okay, so, and with the books, so I will be trying to do free days where I have my books out for free for like a day or two. I think the goal is going to be to put them out for free probably February 1st. So I need to see if I can get the paper. So that'll be ebook version will be free I'm just going to do that February 1st. I know I've got at least one free day left. So Amazon only gives me, what is it, 5? Making a note. So we'll just do February 1st. Okay. So that is that. Yes, Synth asks, hey, Dana, would you consider narrating your books as well, making them into audiobooks? Yes, absolutely. That is on my to figure out list. There's a whole process with turning a book into an audiobook. There's a website, I think it's acx.com, that I was looking at. And so they kind of tell you like what files you need and what, like how to go about it, basically. People are saying, yes, Audible book. Okay, I will start working on that. Okay, so let's. Oh, Sue, great question, asks, is the new 365 group a closed Facebook group? Yes, it is. And that's another thing. If check your privacy settings on your Facebook page to make sure to see who can see your posts, just in general, but also check for your group settings to make sure that other people can't see like what groups you're in. Because privacy it's an ongoing thing that we have in the support groups, and it's a big thing. Yeah, Vera B. Okay, Red Sunflower says, will the free book days be announced in the Facebook groups? Yes. Yes, they will. And Vera B says, whenever I feel a fast, strong attraction to a person, I stop and pay attention, and I realize that they are narcissistic and trying to love bomb, even new quote unquote friends, cut them all out. Yeah, I'm with you. Whenever I feel a really intense pull towards somebody else, I stop. I immediately like back things way up. And it can be difficult. I mean, it's sort of like it's like heroin for a heroin addict. I mean, that pull for that person's intensity can be so incredibly strong. And it terrifies me. I don't like feeling that way. I don't and that's, oh man, and that can really mess with you because it can be so easy to get caught up in, is it them or me? I mean, I know I have PTSD and I can be hypervigilant and I can second guess myself all day long, but I have gotten to the point in my healing where I'm like, you know what? There's a lot of fish in the sea, and for friends or for men or what have you, and I don't like feeling that way. So even if they might have great intentions, they might be a great person, they might whatever, it doesn't even matter. Like what I know about me is it knocks me off balance. I don't like the way that I feel, and because my boundaries and my standards are, I don't do perpetual confusion, and I don't like being in dynamics that make me feel insecure and unhinged. I don't do them. Like I don't get involved with that. And I'm not worried about missing out on a great person because it I can't feel that way. Like it's too draining for me to go through that again. So um, yeah, no more. Yeah, Nikki says, yeah, I won't take that chance anymore. Scuba Girl says, I called a plenty of fish guy out on love bombing. Boy, did he get abusive afterwards. Yeah, and then it's like situations like that where you're like, oh, thank you for confirming my fears, my suspicions, right? Like I totally thought there was something really off about you, but here's the thing with intuition and calling somebody out on squirrely behavior or even seeing squirrely behavior is every single situation that you're in, you're going to get better. You're going to get better at like reading the situation and kind of reading people. But again, it goes back to like, it's you. Does this work for me? Yes or no? Like it pretty much what that boils down to. It doesn't matter. We can second guess them all day long. Are they a narcissist? Are they just kind of problematic? Are they this? Are they that? Does, da 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 da. Like, it's just, does this work? Does this work for me? And so uh yeah. Maria is saying, yes, bad therapy is the worst type of therapy. I never realized that until I heard others' horror stories. Yeah. Yes, it really is. That's probably one of my biggest things that I need to work on is I just have so much anger there. It's unreal. I feel like I was just, I don't know. My experiences with that were just all, and here's the thing too, you guys. Uh, you know, I, please just know I am a woman who is going, who's gone through a lot and who's going through all of this too. I'm going through this healing process. I don't have all the answers. I don't have it all figured out. And there is still stuff within me that I need to work on. And that's I guess one of my biggest concerns with all this is, my concerns would be that if I say something or don't say something and that unintentionally hurts somebody else. So I try to catch myself because like I really do have an axe to grind with kind of the whole psychiatric community. But please don't let me negatively influence you on doing what's right for you and for getting help. That's I've got this issue that I need to work through, and I really try to make a concerted effort to not let that negatively impact you guys. But I don't know. Just kind of let that be said. And and with anything else too, not even just with that. Like at the end of the day, this is about you guys finding yourself and getting in tune with yourself. It's about you finding your wants, your needs, your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, living an authentic life, whatever that looks like for you. It's not about anybody else. It's about figuring out your authentic life and then living that. Okay, so with that said, let's do our kind of grounding ending meditation thing here. So please take a moment and find a comfortable position, whether that's laying down or sitting down. Taking a few deep breaths, kind of in through your nose. And out through your mouth. Allowing yourself to be fully present in this moment. Realizing that this moment is for you, and that you are safe, that you are here, that you're not in the future, you're not in the past. You are in this moment, that there's nothing else to do but to just get comfortable and breathe. Letting the tension just release from your body. Noticing if you have any worry, anxiety, or fear. If you're holding on to any of that, now is a good time to visualize taking all of that worry, anxiety, or fear, visualizing it as a ball. Whatever ball comes to mind, whatever size comes to mind. Maybe it's a tennis ball, maybe it's a softball, maybe it's a basketball. Kind of making it into a ball and putting it down beside you. Realizing that at any given time, you can pick up that ball again, or you can decide to just leave that ball there. That while all of those feelings might still be present within you, that it's okay to set them down from time to time. We don't need to carry them 24 hours a day. It's okay. It's okay to relax. It's okay to be in the moment. It's okay to slow down. It's okay. It's okay to breathe. It's okay to allow some time to have some fun, even though you might not feel like it. It's okay. With each breath, allowing your body to grow heavier and heavier, releasing the tension from around your eyes and in your forehead, releasing your cheeks and the muscles around your mouth. releasing your jaw, letting your tongue fall from the roof of your mouth as you let your jaw hang open slightly. Letting any and all remaining tension dissipate from your head and from your face. Moving your way down to your neck and your shoulders. Feeling them get heavy, feeling them drop. Releasing the tension. Realizing it's okay. You're here in the moment. Nothing else to do except be here. Relaxing your shoulders, maybe letting them open up. Relaxing your chest, realizing it's okay. It's okay to let your arms fall open, to release the tension from your body. With each breath that you breathe in, going deeper and deeper, allowing your lungs to expand more fully. And with each exhale, releasing any remaining tension or worry, grounding yourself in this moment. Relaxing your stomach, your middle back, your lower back. Feeling the heaviness as your back completely relaxes. Moving on down to your hips and your thighs. And relaxing, letting your legs fall into any position that's comfortable for you. Relaxing your thighs, your knees, your calves. Feeling the weight of your legs as they relax completely. Relaxing your feet, letting them fall in whichever way is most comfortable. Relaxing your toes. Relaxing your arms, your forearms, and your hands. Letting your hands open and go limp. Now feeling the weight of your relaxed body. And visualize a healing, calming, soothing, beautiful whitish silver light. Maybe it looks kind of like a candle flame, or maybe just a pinpoint of light. Imagine that it's inside your chest. And with each breath, that light grows bigger and brighter. What started off as a pinpoint or a small candle flame is rapidly growing into a larger and larger sphere, maybe to the size of a tennis ball, then to a volleyball, to a basketball. As it rapidly starts expanding, filling up your chest cavity, your torso. Notice that the light is moving quickly. It's almost like it's dancing as it's zigzagging and swirling, and almost like it's splashing and swimming around every single cell in your body. Every single cell that it's touching, it's healing. It's giving each cell a little hug, reminding you that you can heal from this and that you are healing in both big and small ways every single day. You truly are. Even if you're not aware that you are, you really are. And imagine that light as it's filling up, it's going down your arms, up your neck, into your head, moving effortlessly, joyfully, going down into your legs and into your feet. As you allow yourself to be completely filled with this amazing healing light, this light that connects you to everything that is good and right with yourself and with the world. Realizing that this light is always burning inside of you. It's always there. Now let's take a moment and visualize some people, perhaps in this chat or perhaps in your normal life. Anybody that's special to you, including animals, that you want to go send an energetic hug to. So let's take a moment and reach out to those people, letting them know that everything that is good and right about us honors and appreciates everything that is good and right about them as we give them an energetic hug. Let's do that for about 12 breaths. And when you're ready, come on back. Make sure to give yourself a very big, energetic hug, letting yourself know that you honor and acknowledge everything that is good and right within you. And there is lots that is good and right about you. When you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. So, welcome back. Yes, Scuba Girl says, take care, everyone. 2018 will be a year of growth and fulfillment, I believe. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. And I hope to see you in the new group if you're interested in something like that, or in the other group if you're interested in, or in both groups. And if not, then I will see you back here next Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you guys take care. Have a fantastic week. I'll talk to you soon. Lots of love to you. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care. Good night.